You look like a freaking desk jockey. Don't underestimate the Yakuza, jackass. Let's fight. Get him, big bro, Rappa.
You grazed my body. Impressive.
Hello everybody, Megazard here. I'm back at it again to give y'all another very exciting episode review over My Hero Academia. This time I'm going to be reviewing episode 73, Temp Squad. And if you haven't already checked out my episode 72 review over last week's My Hero Academia episode, you can go ahead and click that card in the corner and check that video out, and then come back and check this one though, because man, I have got to say, alright, so this episode, I'll be honest, it isn't my most favorite, episode of the whole entire season that we got within season 4 so far. However, it's much like making a puzzle, so to say. How, everybody wants to be so quick to be able to put together all of these different episodes to get the grand scheme picture that we want to see maybe towards the end of an arc or whatever though. But this episode in itself is like that little corner piece of the puzzle piece for us to be able to understand the whole entire picture. Yes, it may not be the most exciting episode in the world though, but it does help us to be able to tie in certain plot points with certain things that we got revealed to us earlier on within the anime that overall helps build a grander picture. That's the kind of vibe I kind of got within this episode. So there were some kind of cool things that I sort of really liked in this episode though, but then obviously there were some slower parts of the episode, things I didn't quite like as much as well though. But I'll get about all the nitty gritty in that within this episode review for this week though. But yeah, so let's go ahead and dive straight up into this episode 73 review of My Hero Academia.
あの日守ると決めた約束はこの胸に精一杯この涙かき分けて君に全てをあげるからお願いどうか消えないでくれあの日守ると決めた約束
So starting off at the very beginning of the episode, we basically get like a little mini recap of some of the previous events that happened in the last episode though. But, pushing that stuff aside, we mainly get to see the brand new content at the very beginning of the episode, right after that, where they basically show Overhaul just kind of walking down the hallway. He has one of his other members holding Eri with him, and essentially these two are just kind of walking down this hallway, and they were basically kind of discussing like what their plans were, and he said, well, I hope basically, all those other people that were basically slowing down the hero force and dividing them up and splitting them up, he basically was hoping that, hey, they were basically able to do their jobs and everything. Because essentially what they basically came down to at the conclusion is, as long as Overhaul and his father, the old boss is what they keep referring to him as long as both of them are alive, kicking him well, then hey, you know what, the Yakuza group is going to be able to live, and especially as long as he has his hands on that finished product of the serum, they can essentially bring back the Yakuza from the brink of destruction, because essentially at this point he's basically almost losing everything except for that serum that he's basically holding really close on his person now. And that's essentially kind of the game plan that Overhaul has at this point though. But then essentially, as he's walking away, he's like, all right, now it's time to, it's basically time for y'all to be able to stand up and hold your end of the bargain. And the two people that he was referring to was none other than Toga as well as Twice. So this is where we get to see the connection with the League of Villains actually tying into the Sakai. And the fact of the matter that these two were the ones that come up, and and he basically kind of refers to them as Temp. So that's the whole point of emphasis of where this episode title came from. Temp Squad, being the temporary members of Toga and Twice that's actually helping and assisting the Yakuza group. So I'll get more about my thoughts about that in terms of them being temporary members and whatnot later on within this episode review though. But then moving back, we get to go back to the scene where we get to see a beaten up Kirishima as well as Fat Gum, and they're kind of just they're just in their beaten up states and just kind of recovering from that state of the battle. And essentially we get to see a brief flashback of Kirishima in the past kind of, just talking to Fat Gum and stuff. And it was in this sort of kind of moment where we kind of get basically a sweet conclusion of, the stuff that happened in the previous episode. And it actually kind of made that connection of how Tamaki was able to relate with Kirishima with his sort of shy nature in terms of him, not being, super confident with the abilities that he was basically born with in terms of his quirks and stuff. So that's how we sort of kind of got that, grand conclusion of basically how him as well as Kirishima were able to relate, and that's how it basically brought Kirishima to Fat Gum's agency. And then Fat Gum was just kind of reflecting about all of this, and the fact of the matter that he was super proud of Kirishima. So it was all pretty good though. However, when you think all is good and well, you better think again, because somehow Rappa winds up getting back up off of the ground, and he basically wants another fight to the death. And and it was kind of crazy just to see this dude, take a extremely strong beating like this and still be able to get up though. However, he doesn't have enough strength to actually kind of, move his arms around anything like that. And then his buddy is over here is kind of warning him. It's like, hey, dude, you know what? Hey, don't be trying to help him or do anything kind of funny or whatever though. But he quickly brushes that to the side and said, you know what? You can't put up no shield no more. So why don't you just close your mouth and let me talk to them or whatever though. And he essentially, kind of gives down a little breakdown of his kind of backstory and past. And he used to come from a world of MMA where, fighters basically use their quirks, and, they basically just, it's kind of like a ring match, like a cage fight in a sort of kind of manner where they just use their quirks and just beat up on him though. But however, Rappa was so strong or whatnot that most fights were to end in like one punch. Like they couldn't withstand a whole bunch of blows from them in the same kind of similar manner that Fat Gum did as well as Kirishima did. So basically he figured out, it was like, hey, you know what, during that fight when your lives are basically on the line, that's where you're gonna fight your absolute best. And that's that kind of crave that man kind of wanted to go on though. And you know what, and Fat Gum was basically thinking, man, you crazy though. But essentially Rappa said, hey, why don't you come follow me? I got a place where we can, patch ourselves up, so that way we can have a rematch, so to say. And at first, Fat Gum didn't really trust him or whatever though, but then he was like, well, this dude's kind of simple-minded and everything. There's no way that this dude's actually working an alternative motive. So he's like, okay, well, I guess I kind of have to go with you, because there's no way they're going to basically catch back up to Izuku and the rest of the squad that were still kind of pushing and trying to find Overhaul though. But then we get to see a quick little scene change where we get to see Iranaka, and he started to use the building morphing to his building morphing kind of quirk to basically throw everything on, and it seems like he basically wanted to crush everybody like pancakes. So he started to use his quirk to basically collapse the hallways all together. And it started to seem really bad though, but then we get a change in scene, and we actually get to go back to where Kirishima is actually resting on a table. He's basically bandaged up and he's all kind of trying to recover, and Fat Gum begins to question Rappa. And somehow Overhaul, during the midst of how Rappa was basically talking about his backstory though, Rappa actually got associated with the Yakuza group whenever Overhaul actually managed to encounter him and say, hey, why don't you kind of work with me? He seemed like he saw a bunch of potential within the man, and he was like, hey, why don't you fight me over it? Because I'm not just gonna willy-dilly kind of disassociate myself with you. No, you gotta have to prove a point. And get this, Overhaul actually managed to beat Rappa 5 whole times. And this was the thing, because we know how crazy Overhaul's quirk is. So the fact of the matter that he actually beat him 5 times, and Rappa explained that basically he killed him, but somehow in the midst of him basically dying and knowing that, hey, he's dead, he managed to get brought back to life. And he did this not only just once, not just twice, not even 3 times, but no, 5 times in a row. So then immediately Fat Gum started opening his eyes up even wider than what they were before, and he was like, whoa, to think that this dude is so powerful that he was able to beat Rappa 5 times like this. And the fact of the matter that we saw the beating that Fat Gum and Kirishima took from this, so we basically figure out at this point that this dude is insane with his ability to be able to control matter like that. Like this dude, oh my gosh, I don't even know how they're gonna be able to fight this dude though. But then Rappa spills the beans on Overhaul's plans, and essentially, at first, Tengai was trying to prevent him from doing it though, but Rappa was just flat out talking with him at this point though, and he basically explains that, hey, Overhaul needs the money in order to help distribute a product, and once they have it, it will help them make the Yakuza group powerful again. So that's basically sort of kind of some of the angles that that Overhaul is essentially working with in terms of his grand whole scheme that we're still trying to sort of kind of piece together exactly what he really wants. But it seems like he's trying to do this all for the good of Yakuza, at least on the surface level of what we've been seeing throughout the season so far though. And then we get a scene change back to our heroes that are trying to, you know, pursue Overhaul, and someone actually yelled out to Rockrock Locke to do something because, you know, that Ironaka was basically using his quirk to basically crush everything around him and, you know, basically kill him like that. And Rockrock Locke started to use his quirk, and we finally get to see this man in action using his quirk. And his quirk is locked down, and he can make non-living things freeze in place with the touch of his hand. So to think that he basically can touch the wall or touch any other living thing and basically kind of freeze it and suspend it in time, I think that's actually pretty cool and kind of a unique and kind of interesting quirk in itself though. So it was pretty cool to actually, you know, see what he is fully capable of. And basically it was during this moment where we basically see Rockrock Locke being able to freeze the walls so that way they don't get crushed, you know, from like an east to west sort of kind of standpoint though. But if you're thinking like a north to south perspective, Ironaka was still able to bring, you know, parts of the wall flying towards him though. But this is when Izuku basically jumped into play and he started using the shoot style where he was able to basically kick down the rebel and stuff that was being flown at him though. So it was a combination of Rockrock Locke as well as Izuku where they were able to keep pushing forward further down the hallway though. And it was at this moment where Ironaka decides to split the force into half. And, you know, it was at this point where we got to see Ironaka basically saying, hey, you know what, that quirk enhancement that he basically took to enhance his quirk and put it in overdrive, it was only going to last for so much longer. So he basically needed to finish up this job quick. So basically he started to go into cahoots with his secondary group of people that he's working with. So that's why he split the wall down in half. And it was during this moment where Rockrock Locke was like, oh man, we basically split up though. But before he can really sort of kind of get a chance to kind of catch himself or kind of figure out, you know, exactly what was going on, because Sonata say, hey, be ready to expect anything during this moment though. It was at this moment where we get to see Toga kind of jump towards him, and basically he stabbed Rockrock Locke in the hand like that. But then Rockrock Locke used that to kind of, you know, he used that to freeze, you know, the knife, so that way she couldn't do nothing else with the knife or whatever though. And then he tried to punch her, and then, you know, she basically morphed into like nothing, like, you know, a pile of like muddy, gooey-ish thing that she normally does. And then all of a sudden she appears from Rockrock Locke's back and stabs him in the back like that, and we're like, oh shoot. And then it was at this moment where Izuku's like, all right, this wall ain't gonna hold me back. So he knocks down the wall, and then they go over there, and then, you know, we had the imposter over there trying to psych him out, and they were like, he was basically saying, hey, you know what, you know, there's an imposter over here that tried to come out here and attack out of nowhere though. But then Eraserhead knew that, wait a second, something doesn't look right with that blade, and then the way how this person got stabbed and everything like that. And he was like, wait a minute, no, that's somebody else. And then we get to see it was Toga. You know, Toga started going after Izuku like crazy. This girl is, oh my gosh, this girl's a nut job. I don't even know how people in the My Hero Academia community even like this girl. I guess she's just so tsundere to a point where the people just enjoy her. I don't know how, but this girl, oh my gosh, is something else though. But essentially Eraserhead managed to kind of get her sort of kind of pinned down to a point. And it was at this point where basically she was sort of kind of able to make her getaway though, despite all of this stuff. And then basically they kind of recollected themselves after, you know, she actually managed to stab Mr. Eraserhead for a moment though. And, you know, he basically instructed him to, you know, gather all the knives because he knew that Toga's quirk involved the blood of the victims that she basically stabbed. So basically we need to take some precautions so that way, you know, she doesn't have like a one-up advantage over all of us. So, you know, essentially, you know, that's how that kind of scene played out though. But she managed to make a quick getaway though. And then we get to see a scene change where we get to see a few days in the past of when Shigaraki was actually talking to Overhaul, and they basically came to the conclusion that Overhaul wanted Toga and Twice in exchange for all the information that Overhaul gave to Shigaraki in terms of his plans and what his overall goal is. So he basically said, hey, you know what, if I give you XYZ that has, you know, so much value to it, you're gonna have to come to the table as well and give me something important. And he knew that, you know, within the few people that he basically asked for, he knew that those people were really close to Shigaraki. So that's why he was asking something of, you know, equal value in terms of something that was super important to Shigaraki in return for the information that he provided Shigaraki. So at first Shigaraki was kind of put off by this, but he basically knew, you know, what he was essentially dealing with though. So then he started having some alternative motives in his head himself though, but we get to see, you know, what his kind of plans about that are a little bit later within the episode, not too much further down though. And then we get a scene change jumping right back to the modern time where we get to see Sir Night-Eye actually fight against Twice. Now this might be like a little mini highlight for me within the episode, because, you know, we didn't actually get to really see Sir Night-Eye actually fight and go, you know, hand to hand against, you know, any kind of villains or anything in that kind of a nature though. And the fact of the matter that this dude could actually hold his own against some people though, because he basically used some support items that actually weighed 5 kilograms each, and he was able to make quick work against Rappa, which wasn't really Rappa, but was like a Rappa lookalike though. But anyway, he was able to make quick work out of that person, and he basically said, hey, thanks to him being able to look at, you know, fighting against so many different people and, you know, using his quirk in order to see so many different possibilities, his combat ability within fighting within close quarters is really strong, to the point where, you know, he's able to predict and outmaneuver you and be able to hit you in, you know, decisive areas and make some decisive blows against you though. So that was really cool to be able to, you know, see him in action. And he actually, during the midst of all of this, actually managed to rip off Twice's mask, and basically, you know, he started having like a split headache, you know, sort of kind of dealing with his quirk and whatever though. But, you know, thankfully for him, you know, Toga was actually able to, you know, kind of reassure him and everything though, kind of patch up that little tear up in his costume and whatnot, and was basically sort of kind of acting like a weird mother figure, which honestly kind of put me back for a second. I was like, what the heck is sort of kind of going on though? But I don't know, that just sort of kind of plays into Toga's nature though. But then we get to see, you know, another flashback to those few days ago, and Twice and Toga are basically having concerns as to why they are actually working with the same guy that actually killed one of their members and took the other members off. So they're basically thinking, hey, was Shigaraki kind of going crazy in the head? Like, why in the world are we associating ourselves with the same people that actually managed to kill one of our dudes and take the other dude's arm? I don't know about you, but if I were in their same shoes, I wouldn't be messing with this dude either. I'm afraid they're gonna try to slit my throat. But then Shigaraki actually reveals his face to those two, and, you know, you can reply in the comment section if I was wrong about this though, but that was one of those rare times in this anime as a whole, if you look back through any of the seasons, where Shigaraki ever actually revealed his face. So that's how sincere that he was trying to be with all of them. And even though there are villains, and even though they're wrong in all the different acts that they are still sort of kind of acting like a sort of close family. And we're getting to see, you know, Shigaraki sort of kind of growing in that kind of regard though. And he basically said, hey, you know what, I know that they treated us wrong though, but it's through this how we're basically gonna make sure that their deaths don't go down in vain, because he's gonna basically make them pay for what they basically did. And essentially he's gonna try to he basically tells Twice as well as Toga that, hey, you know what, they're gonna try to influence you to basically come to their side, so that way I lose power, with the League of Villains losing my, you know, my king and queen pieces on my on my chessboard over here though. But essentially what I want y'all to do is be able to infiltrate them, you know, butter them up, make them feel good and everything, get as much inside information as possible, and, you know, be working in the shadows underneath them. So that way, you know, remember that, hey, we're the ones that's basically, even though it may seem like they're the ones that are calling out the shots, no, it's basically going to be them as the top dogs in the end game, in terms of them being able to make the shot calls at the very end though. So Shigaraki's sort of kind of working that angle though. So he's basically trying to get the benefits out of the Yakuza group as much as possible though, while still, you know, sort of kind of trying to elevate himself over the Yakuza group and the plans that they're basically going through. And then jumping back to the modern age one more time, we get to see basically the end of the episode where Toga and Twice essentially anger Iranaka so much to the point where he gets super enraged and he just creates like a portal underneath them, not just underneath Toga as well as Twice, but also underneath some of our heroes like Izuku and Eraserhead and some other members, and it basically seems like they're falling down a hole. And exactly why did they provoke him to the point like that, I do not know, but I know for sure it's going to wind up playing into the events. That's what's going to happen into the next episode, and that's essentially where the episode ends though. But looking at the preview for the next episode in the series, oh shoot, this is literally a bridge episode leading into that, because we finally get to see some Togeda action for the first time though, and something does not sit well in my stomach. That is all I'm gonna say about that, because after we get this grand conclusion fight between him and this encounter within the next episode, oh shoot, it's really going to be something though. But that is pretty much it for this episode review though. But overall, if you really like this episode review, go ahead and leave something down in the comments. I'm really curious to see what y'all actually thought about this episode as a whole though. It wasn't like the most important, well, not the most important, but it wasn't the most, high action, kind of high paced episode that was super exciting though. But it definitely helped in terms of the plot building and trying to get a grander idea in terms of what all is trying to go down within this season though. But that's pretty much it for my episode review, so I hope y'all enjoyed it. But that is all that I have for y'all for this week's episode review over My Hero Academia. So if you really like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and that bell to keep up to date on all things My Hero Academia. In the mad dash to save Eri, Togeda finally catches up to Overhaul, but will his power be enough to stop Overhaul? And will Togeda manage to hold out until the other heroes arrive? Or will he lose something far greater in the process? We'll have to find out about this and more in next week's episode review called Lemillion. So remember y'all, until whatever video I make next, go beyond. Pas Ultra!